We begin with a busy day here in Los Angeles. Tensions are soaring here, escalating further as authorities brace now for possibly a fifth day of protest against President Trump's immigration crackdown. California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom today filing an emergency motion seeking to block the president's troop deployment to the city. It now stands at more than 4,000 National Guard members as well as 700 Marines. The president set to speak just moments from now to Army soldiers here stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Earlier today, he defended his military deployment to Los Angeles and said he would invoke the Insurrection Act if he thinks there's reason to, adding, quote, "We will see."
If we didn't get involved right now, Los Angeles would be burning, just like it was burning a number of months ago with all the houses that were lost. Los Angeles right now would be on fire, and we have it in great shape. We're not playing around.
How will you determine? Los Angeles Democratic Mayor Karen Bass today slamming the president's actions in response to the protests.
We are 12 months away from the World Cup. We need the administration to help us prepare. They are talking about spending over $100 million with this deployment, which is why I say that I feel like we've all been in Los Angeles a part of a grand experiment to see what happens when the federal government decides they want to roll up on a state or roll up on a city and take over.
I want to bring in ABC News' Melissa Adon. She's in Los Angeles. She's on the ground for us to tell us what it's really like. So give us the breakdown here of the situation, what you're seeing today.
Yes, Kana. So about here, I want to say about 100 people, lots of members of the media and the California National Guard members that we're seeing up here. These are the several dozens that are out here on this backside of the federal courthouse building. They're also stationed again onto the front side of this building. This is the same building that has also been defaced with graffiti. And you can see the crowds of protesters on that side. We have an American flag. We have Mexican flags. I saw someone with a sign about Chile, about Paraguay. We also earlier here, Kana, had a group that was discussing essentially an interfaith group that said they wanted just to gather peacefully. They were actually giving out little flowers and sharing some prayers. They then made the mention and shared how later tonight there's going to be a larger interfaith prayer vigil that's going to be happening in Grand Park. That's several blocks over here from the federal courthouse and from the Hall of Justice. And in that area, that's actually where Mayor Karen Bass says she plans to attend. So that's something that's really curious. Of course, this is now the afternoon. This is the largest groups that we've seen here for today for this fifth day of protest, Kana.
Well, Melissa, we both know, right, an interfaith prayer with the mayor attending, that would certainly be a different scene in the nighttime hours than we have seen in Los Angeles these last few nights. So what more do we know about the mayor's local preparation heading into tonight?
Exactly. It's really interesting, right, that she's sharing that she's going to come out here. That's something that is really new information. Mayor Bass making it also really clear today during her presser that she does not stand with those that are causing violence or vandalism. But then reporters asked her, so what is the city doing about it? Well, essentially, the mayor doubled down saying that the California National Guard, she says these guys here are not needed. And she's pointing to basically local law enforcement. On the other side here from the 101 freeway, that's actually where we've seen the LAPD stacked up with other sheriff's officers also stacked up. Another interesting point, Kana, when we were traveling in here throughout the 101 freeway, essentially what they have done there, CHP has blocked off the ramps coming into downtown. So that looks like a measure that was taken. There was Caltrans signs basically from Broadway past Temple all the way past until the interchange with the 5 freeway. So it's making it difficult for cars to come in. But if you can circumvent that, you can park, you can easily walk in. So I'm curious to see how that's going to either deter or encourage crowds tonight.
Right, it sounds like CHP taking some preventative measures there, and you're right. We'll see how it plays out. Melissa Dunn, our thanks to you. And for more on the president's immigration crackdown, I want to bring in our ABC News contributor, former FBI agent Brad Garrett. So first of all, Brad, let's talk a little bit here about the training. This has come into the limelight right now. There's been some criticism that perhaps National Guard, Marines don't have the training in crowd control that local police officers would have, although the Marine Corps Commandant General General Eric Smith said he pushed back on that. He feels like the Marines specifically are trained in crowd control. It's part of their standard annual training, and they're well equipped to do so.
So that may well be, Kara, but the problem is the following, is that coordinating both the National Guard, the Marines, and LAPD is the critical component for this to work at all. Because maybe they're trained, maybe they aren't. Do they have non-lethal weapons like LAPD does? I don't know. But the point being, you can't just turn the National Guard or the Marines loose. It's really got to be a coordinated effort where LAPD is sort of driving what's going on. I get why the National Guard and the U.S. Marshals are at the federal buildings. That's their turf. However, if that becomes a real issue, like what's happened the last 2 or 3 nights, you're going to need more than just them. You're going to need LAPD to help you. I don't know if they're there or not, but it's the coordination is the real key here. The commander of the National Guard, the commander of the Marines, and the on-scene commander for LAPD have to be like on the same phone all the time if they're not all together someplace. Because this could go badly in regards to not having it coordinated and then get people to overreact. And that could be a real problem.
Do you think that's reasonable to think that they would actually be on the phone and be in that kind of communication here, right? Because the National Guard, the Marines will be taking their orders from the federal level. LAPD is taking their orders from the chief. And even Chief McDonnell addressed this, LAPD chief. He said, we're urging continuous lines of communication between all agencies to prevent confusion and avoid escalation and ensure a coordinated, lawful, orderly response.
I don't know that they have any choice. You have to coordinate these things. What's going to happen is if things go bad in front of that federal courthouse, do you have people that are actually equipped and trained to deal in the minimal amount of force? I just don't know the answer to that. And what can happen at the courthouse could happen wherever LAPD is with the National Guard. You know, there's a lot of intel probably exchanged here. There's probably people that are either looking for or have arrested that may be instigators at one or both of these locations. You've got to share all that information because it's the only way it's going to work. Now, to your point, are they? I would assume they are, but we'll see.
We'll be watching this all very closely. Brad Garrett, our thanks as always to you. I also want to bring in ABC News' Christian Cordero and senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty at the Pentagon with the latest for us from D.C. So a lot to talk about here, Christian. We've seen this growing war of words, as you know, between Governor Gavin Newsom and several different Republican politicians, members of the Trump administration. It really appears the rhetoric is escalating, really ramping up right now.
And it's not like these two were really good friends before, Kana, right? They have had rifts before in the past several months in particular, but this certainly has reached a really strong tension point, if you will. Of course, because of that emergency order, it continues to escalate. That was filed by Newsom. And then it also follows the lawsuit that was announced yesterday, right, where the state of California is suing the administration over the deployment of the National Guard, saying that they didn't do so legally. And then Trump today, the president called Newsom a liar, failing to prioritize the needs of his state, is what the president alleges. And we have seen the back and forth over the past few days with Newsom daring border czar Tom Homan to arrest him, and then the president saying that that might be a good idea.
Well, and we know that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth testifying on Capitol Hill today. We're learning more about the scope and the cost of this deployment. What are we hearing from the Secretary?
Yeah, so we saw a really defiant Pete Hegseth up on Capitol Hill. He said that this mission is estimated to cost about $134 million. It's expected to last 60 days. And he said, basically, we have the power to go into any state, any jurisdiction to prevent violence from happening. And he said the goal here is to make sure that immigration authorities can carry out the duties that they need to carry out. I think we've got some sound. Let's take a listen to him.
We stated very publicly that it's 60 days because we want to ensure that those rioters, looters, and thugs on the other side assaulting our police officers know that we're not going anywhere.
Telling Combs in one that she wanted to
Kana, that's right. So rioters, looters, and thugs, a lot of people in California are saying, look, this is just making it simply worse. It's attracting these, people who are coming into the protest to cause chaos. But of course, Secretary Hegseth, you just heard it from him. He says that they aren't going anywhere.
Right, he wants to make a point, but that they're going to be there for a long time. And Christian, on that note, we've seen now these protests against immigration enforcement sort of grow as the week goes on into other cities as well. To your knowledge, is there any consideration that the White House might send the National Guard or the military into another city?
The president alluded to it earlier today in the Oval Office, Kana, saying that, opening the door of potential military deployments elsewhere should there be protests that escalate in other cities. But a word that Ann just used, right, is that perhaps that is also inviting that kind of behavior. In fact, Representative Betty McCollum of Minnesota, she is a top Democrat in the House subcommittee. She called the decision premature and downright escalatory.
Well, and Ann, what about Governor Newsom sharing these photos we've seen? They're circulating, right? Members of the National Guard sleeping on the ground. He was trying to call out the president for sending in troops without food or water or a place to sleep, but defense officials quickly responding today.
Yeah, we just got a statement moments ago from Northcom, which has command of these troops, and they tell me that the soldiers in this photo were resting as they were not currently on mission. And due to the fluid security situation, it was deemed too dangerous, is what they said, for them to travel to better accommodations. Now, I have spoken to officials in this building who say, look, this is what the National Guard does, is they deploy to an emergency. Sometimes you got to sleep on the floor. They don't have food or fuel. Come on, you're in the middle of L.A. So, a lot of people casting doubt on this, but certainly, I think the optics are there, which is that, President Trump did not necessarily plan this. He did not necessarily think this out. But authorities saying that we simply have to do this because they're calling it an emergency. California officials disputing that, of course, and saying this is making things simply worse.
And there's some pushback in LA as well on the idea that it would be too dangerous to move National Guard troops to a place where they could sleep. Christian and Ann, a lot more to talk about throughout the day.